So today I wanted to explain a little more about my technique and also how it actually relates to meditation or Buddhist practice, and also why, as it were, a strategic alliance between Jungian thought, practice, and Buddhism can be like perhaps of extreme importance to practitioners of of meditation and Jungian psychology. The idea of the practice of touching the shadow is simply that we have to become aware that we are coloring in the world based on the state we are in. So if I'm depressed, frightened, fearful, anxious, I will blow the world out of proportion, meaning I would make things worse than they are, more threatening, more overwhelming. And but so the link to the Buddhist practice is that then I become aware does that what I am doing actually is that I'm witnessing the observer that is doing this projecting, which is not perceiving, but projecting, which we mistake for perceiving. You see, in the moment I do that, who is witnessing the observer? And that's the true self. That's the self with a capital S. Um, you see, so basically, then we are in the orbit of the self when we do that. And then we also realize that, so we become not anymore a victim of our perceptions, which are just projections. So then we are able to, for instance, say that okay, the world is not overwhelming. It's I am projecting that onto the world. But you see, so in Buddhist terms, that would be the illusion. But on the other hand, in terms of the shadow, we need to take that back as part of us. You see, so we do not dismiss that as just illusory. And then we realize, no, that's a part of me that feels, that is overwhelming and great, and thus it's a part of my strength that I am projecting out there. And then, so when I take that back, we get like that merger of the opposites, and then we connect to the self. So this is so important because whilst it being illusory in terms of the world as such, as to not being a property or an attribute of the world, it is a part of me that has been dismembered and separated and thus projected at that moment. This is where the synergy between Buddhism and this practice of this Jungian application called touching the shadow is so crucial, because you see, together they we then are availed of a way to be and much more proactive with Jungian practice, but also be more continent, or what we would call mentally toilet trained with Buddhist practice. Because if we were to just try to dismiss everything we see as an illusion, it could take us back into what we would call in the West repression and denial of certain things of ourselves. So this, as it were, this collaboration, this strategic alliance between the East and the West in these terms does, I feel, take can take us back, truly back to the self in a very sustainable way, while not, as it were, forgetting the problem of the shadow, which is like endemic to the Western mind. Um, so the whole point becomes to be able to simply connect to the self with the capital S perspective. Simply meditate with open eyes on realizing How am I at any moment coloring in the world? Am I making more of it, more than it is? Am I making less of it? And it's not about trying to will anything out of it. It's simply becoming aware of that. Because when I am aware of the way I am coloring in, then I am, as it were, witnessing the observer. And just becoming aware of that perspective puts me back into this, as it were, the orbit of the self. And the orbit of the self is non-local. That's the true self. That self is the self that, as the image in the beginning of the video shows, it's a meditating man with a orb on top of him with another man meditating in it. Now that is exactly the whole point. We need to just, as it were, reach that perspective of the self who is witnessing the observer, creating the observation, because it's always an interpretation. You see, and in this way, and that self, we will find symptoms that that self is constellated, synchronicities, nudges, valid confirmations, non-local activity in your dreams. So it's really not an act of thinking anymore. It's just that awareness. And then we flow. Then we're in the self orbit, which is like so blissful and so peaceful, and it's really a whole different feeling. There's not a feeling of anxiety or aggression anymore, or a feeling that we're out of time or we have to achieve something. And you can do that also when you talk to, when you can observe this process. People are always, I know this gentleman that he will very quickly tend to, as it were, see certain people in roles of superiority, and then of course try to bring them down to size. And that's a projection. And if he were to realize that he's coloring, he's creating that impression by him feeling inferior, and witnessing that, realizing that what he's seeing is actually his own creation. One, he would escape that prison of constantly butting up on people that are more than him. So he would not have that. He would be able to, like, as it were, delete that thought as a property of the world, but can contain that as a part of himself, merge with that thought, which would help us yet more into the witnessing role of the observer, which is the self. And then we become what that image depicted of a man that is actually looking down at himself from out of that orb. And that's actually ascension, because the higher self is out of space and time, and then we have ascended. It's really as simple as that. And the problem is that we go back into the stream of life, and then we forget to do this witnessing work, meaning to become aware of our projections and witness the observer creating these interpretations. And so the moment I am aware that I'm coloring in the world, I am actually in, if you wish, in meditation or in therapy, as it were. And then I'm in the self. So I just sit down and do that witness. And while others are fighting about whose perception is right. And while it's just this simple work, then it's just witnessing that what you're seeing is your creation. If I'm hot, I will experience outside as cold. If I am low, I will experience out there as great. If I'm high, I will experience out there as inferior, as dumb. Others are dumb and I'm smart. And then it's just gaining that perspective of the self, and that's then we get footage from that multi-dimensional perspective of the self, which is beyond space and time. And this is what I call the movie maker of the dreams. Then the dreams send us a true wisdom beyond perception and interpretation and synchronicity. My technique.